Hello and welcome to this army of smart people. My name is Duncan. I am the leader and proprietor of this army. I am happy to welcome you and feel free, feel welcome, feel at home. This is the place where we share, we inform, and we educate the masses. I have a goal of making sure that people are empowered through understanding basic concepts around the issues that they face on a day-to-day basis in their community. I have a focus on Kenya and the rest of Africa. And if you have managed to join us today, then you definitely belong here. Please subscribe and continue watching our content. Today, I'm going to go straight into one of these topics that I started last week. As you can remember, I had introduced you to a realization that Ghana as a country has declared bankruptcy. And it's not a fluke, it is true that the Ghanaian government has struggled to pay its debt, basically because they do not have access to foreign denominated currencies which are necessary for you to be able to offset your debt that has fallen due. And there are so many other factors that I had given you guys. And for those who have not watched it, just check out this channel. I will also share the link once I produce this video, and you'll be able to just see how I try to explain why the Ghanaian government found itself where it found itself. And many people actually have consumed that content, and one of the people asked me, by the way, between the Kenyan currency and the Ghanaian currency, which one is stronger? This conversation is not happening for the first time. It has happened so many times before, as many people have always believed that the Ghanian Cedi is stronger than the Kenyan shillings. Today, I'm here to demystify that theory, or fact for that matter. I'm just here to take you through a walk of how currencies operate and why we are where we are, and whether at the end of this video, you'll be able to determine between the Kenyan shillings and the Ghanaian Cedi, which is the stronger currency. Now, let me first of all take you back slightly. In the olden days, some days around earlier 1930s, 1940s, 1920s, thereabout, there was a fixed rate of determining the exchange rate. That means that the amount of gold you have in your reserves will determine how much you are able to transact, how much you're able to determine the value of your currency. So it used to be gold. But over time, especially during the Bretton Woods conference, as you can all remember, the Bretton Woods conference is the conference that determined the new world order, how the world is going to move post the World War II. And that is how organizations like, of course, the UN, the World Bank, the IMF came up. And part of the conversation was also to standardize the reference point for the currencies. And it was agreed that the dollar will be used as the focal point for the determination of the value of other currencies, or the agreed currency that can be used across the world in international transactions. But the dollar was tied, the value of $1 was tied to 35 ounces, of gold. But over time, I think in the 1970s, so that system, it was a fixed exchange rate. So it was just a fixed exchange rate. If you have a dollar, the value of a dollar was 35 ounces of gold, and that is what will determine how much you are able to transact or how much you are able to exchange. But over time, in the 1970s, there was inflation in America, and the world could not continue putting the value of the dollar to the 35 ounces of gold, because, as you all know, the value of the dollar was depreciating. Inflation in America affected the value of the dollar. And as a result, people broke away, and there was introduced a new system that is a flexible exchange rate system. So a flexible exchange rate system means that if you have a dollar and I have a Ghanaian Cedi, or I have a Kenyan shillings, then I can be able to transact with you based on the prevailing rate, the prevailing agreeable rate that a Ghanaian Cedi can exchange for a dollar, or a Kenyan shilling can exchange for a dollar. And that figure was not to remain constant as before. That figure was to change with the changing economic times. So there are several factors that will always affect the exchange rate. And those factors will determine at every single point in time how much each currency exchanges for another. And that is why in the present world, while there are a few countries that still set their currency exchange rates as fixed, majority of the world countries are now using the flexible exchange rate system, where the value of their currency will be determined by the prevailing economic conditions and situations. Now, back home now, let me tell you what an exchange rate is. An exchange rate is basically how much of your local currency you are willing to give up for you to gain another currency. How much are you willing to lose in Ghanian Cedi or in Kenya shillings for you to gain $1? Or how much are you willing to lose in Kenya shillings for you to gain a Ghanaian Cedi? That is basically what exchange rate means. And there are two types of exchange rates. Yeah, there is the nominal exchange rate, and then there is the real exchange rate. Now, I'm going to take you deeper into understanding these two components of exchange rates. The first exchange rate, the nominal exchange rate, is what majority of the population in the whole world keeps talking about. The world knows more of the nominal exchange rate than the real exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate is what you hear people say the Ghanaian Cedi is stronger than the Kenyan shillings. Because nominal exchange rate is on the surface. Basically, how much of a Ghanaian Cedi exchanges for a Kenyan shillings? How much does a Ghanaian Cedi exchange for $1? How much does a Kenyan shilling exchange for a Ghanaian Cedi? So basically, nominal exchange rate is what you all know. How much of one currency are you willing to lose for the other? Yeah, and based on that alone, at present, $1 is equals to 11.5 Ghanaian Cedi, while at the same time $1 is equals to 141 Kenya shillings. So on the surface, if you look at it, then clearly the Ghanaian Cedi looks stronger from a layman's understanding. It looks stronger. Why? Because you only need a few of Ghanaian Cedi for you to gain $1. You need almost 141 Kenya shillings for you to gain $1. Now that is what people have been using to determine, to conclude that the Ghanaian Cedi is stronger than the Kenyan shillings. Yeah? And for sure, if then you need only 11.5 Cedi for you to get $1, then clearly the nominal value of a Ghanaian Cedi is stronger than the nominal value of a Kenyan shilling. Yeah? And the conversation now, I want to introduce you to this concept that the conversation should not end there. That is not a very, very, very true picture of what an exchange rate actually means. For you to understand a true exchange rate of a currency, you need to look at the second component, which is the real exchange rate. Yeah? The real exchange rate. But before we go there, please understand this. When someone says the Ghanaian Cedi exchanges at 11.5 against the dollar, while the Kenyan shilling exchanges at 141 against the dollar, it has got nothing to do with the Ghanaian Cedi against the Kenyan shillings. It has everything to do with the Ghanaian Cedi against the dollar. So basically what that means is, the reason the Ghanaian Cedi is stronger to the dollar compared to the Kenyan shillings, it just means that Ghanaians are transacting more with Americans than Kenyans are transacting with Americans. There is more transactions between Ghana and the USA than Kenya and the USA. That is the reason why the Ghanaian Cedi has a better exchange rate to the dollar. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Ghanaian Cedi is stronger than the Kenyan shillings. Yeah? And it is for sure true. Ghana is rich in mineral resources. Ghana has cocoa. Ghana has oil. Ghana has gold. And when you're transacting with a superpower like America on those grounds, then clearly you will have an advantage over a country like Kenya that does not have mineral resources to the tune of Ghana. That is why, I will repeat again, that the Ghanaian Cedi has a good exchange rate to the dollar, but not necessarily, you cannot conclude now when you're starting to think about it from the Ghanaian Cedi against the Kenyan shillings. For you to know that, you have to go to the second component, which is the real exchange rate. Now, when you come to the real exchange rate, this is basically down to something called the purchasing power. So how is the purchasing power of a Ghanaian cedi compared to the purchasing power of a Kenyan shilling? Think about an American who has $1, who is buying, let's say, a burger in America. So if a burger in America costs $2, when this America comes to Kenya, he will want to know, do I still have to lose $2 for me to gain a burger? Or do I have to lose $5 for me to gain a burger? Even if I'm buying it in the local currency, how much dollars am I parting with for me to get a burger? And the same American will go to Ghana and you'll ask, if I go to Ghana, how much of dollars am I going to lose for me to gain a burger? Now, when you come down to those details, then you realize that the Kenya shillings has a more purchasing power than the Ghanaian cedi. Why? Because an American coming to Kenya will buy a burger almost at the same amount that he is buying in America. A burger worth $5 in America is probably worth, again, $5 in Kenya. Slightly, it will cost him like maybe slightly higher by almost a 0.2. So a burger in Kenya will cost you like a $5.2. While the same burger in Ghana, the American is going to lose almost $10 or between $10 to $12 for that person to be able to access the same burger. So the American, if you are the American, you have just come to Ghana and you're going to buy a burger. And then you realize that you have to part with almost twice the dollars that you have for you to gain a burger in Ghana. While when you come to Kenya, then you realize that you are parting with only an additional of 0.2 of a dollar. Then you will be more comfortable with Kenya than you will be with Ghana, because you will find Ghana a bit more expensive. Understand? Now, it is unfair for you to look at one item like that to compare for you to conclude. And that is why in the world of economics and in the world of macroeconomics, there is something called consumer price index. And the consumer price index of these countries will give you a clearer view of why the purchasing power of the Kenya shillings is higher than the purchasing power of a Ghanaian cedi, despite the fact that the nominal exchange rate of a Ghanaian cedi is higher than that of Kenya against the dollar. The consumer price index in Kenya has maintained itself at around 134. It has slightly changed. In January 2023, it was around 129. But as of August, it was 134. The consumer price index of Ghana is around 190. What this means is when you take a basket of basic commodities in Kenya versus a basket of basic commodities in Ghana, you're going to spend 134 in Kenya versus 190 in Ghana. Remember, this is an index, so it doesn't have a currency. Someone will tell me, but the currencies are different. This is an index. And an index does not have a currency. You can compare an index versus an index because it's a pool of commodities that have been brought together, and you generate an index that is comparable between one country to another. So the Ghanaian CPI is higher than the Kenyan CPI. That means it is more expensive. A basket of commodities in Ghana is more expensive than a basket of commodities in Kenya. So someone who has $1, whatever you can get with $1 in Kenya, you will only get 7.7 of that commodity in Ghana. So it means that the purchasing power of your dollar will go down in Ghana as compared to the purchasing power of your dollar in Kenya. So in that basic understanding, guys, I'm here to inform you that do not just focus on the nominal exchange rate of a currency for you to try to understand the strength or the purchasing power of a currency. You need to go deeper into the real exchange rate of the currency. And the real exchange rate of the currency will give you a clearer picture of the purchasing power of the country. Because let's take an example. The Japanese, is it yen or what? The currency, yeah, Japanese, I hope it's a yen, I'll confirm that. Yeah, let me just confirm that. Let's confirm that. Japanese what? Japanese yen, still a yen, yeah? So, Japanese yen exchanges at almost 149 against the dollar. So does that mean that the Japanese yen is weaker than the Ghanaian cedi? Is that true? Because you need 149 Japanese yen for you to get $1. Does it mean that Japanese yen is weaker than the Ghanaian cedi? It just means that there is more transactions between. It just means that there is more transactions between Ghana and America. They are doing more transactions, and it has enabled the Ghanaian Ghanaian currency to become stronger, because there is a lot of business that is happening between those two countries. The balance of payments between Ghana and America is good. Yeah, I'll give you another example. The Russian ruble. The Russian ruble exchanges at 96 against the dollar. Does that mean that the Russian ruble is weaker than the Ghanaian cedi? No. So the nominal value will not give you a true picture. You have to look at the real exchange rate. And now the question someone will ask me, okay, so what affects the real exchange rate? Now that you have already determined that the real exchange rate is the most important when you are trying to get these comparisons, what determines the real exchange rate? The real exchange rate is affected by two things. It is affected by income, the income of the country. It is also affected by the interest rates. Yeah? The more a country has a higher interest rate, when your country's interest rates go high, like what is happening in Ghana right now, you all know that the interest rate in Ghana has gone beyond 40%. Yeah? But now what is happening is, while the interest rate in Ghana has gone above 40%, the inflation has even gone higher than the real interest, than the interest rate in Ghana. What that means is Ghana has been having a negative real interest rate. I hope I'm not confusing you guys. The same way you have real exchange rate, there is a real interest rate. The interest rate in Ghana has gone up, but inflation has gone even higher than the interest rate. When inflation is higher than the interest rates, that means that investors are losing their assets. The value of investors' assets are depreciating at a very fast rate. And because now the real interest rate is negative, that automatically starts affecting the real exchange rate. Why? Because that means that there is a general need by investors to release the Ghanaian cedis. They don't want to own the Ghanaian cedis because the Ghanaian cedis are depreciating. So most of them are in demand of the dollar. So there is an oversupply of Ghanaian cedi, which then is not needed. And when there is an oversupply of the Ghanaian cedi, because investors are trying to withdraw their investments out of Ghana because their investments are losing value, then the Ghanaian cedi's value will start going down. Yeah? It will start going down. That is why you've heard that it is depreciating at a very high rate. Yeah? Now, another factor is income. When an income of a country, domestic income of a country goes up, when the economy is doing so well and there's a lot of money, people tend to increase their demand for imports. People tend to want to import a lot of things. You tend to want to buy things from America, from Japan, from China, and all that. When you do that, it means again you're releasing your domestic currency and you're looking for dollars, for euros, and all that. And in that case, the economy, the markets will be swamped by your domestic currency, and the value of your domestic currencies will go down. And that is why you need to have a very good balance of payments. So Kenya has a good balance of payments compared to the Ghanaian cedi. There is a very good balance of payments which has enabled Kenya to maintain its real value as compared to the Ghanaian cedi. Yeah? And that is the reason, my brothers and sisters, when you look at the details like that, then you come to understand that the nominal value of the Ghanaian cedi is stronger than the Kenyan shillings against the dollar, but the real value of the Ghanaian cedi is not higher than the Kenyan shillings. And to just finish this up, the Kenyan shillings has maintained its real interest rate at almost 4%. So the other country is doing negative, while the other country is doing positive 4%. As an investor, where do you put your money? Where do you put your money? Ask yourself that question. Do you put your money where the value of your money is going to depreciate, or you put your money where the value of your money is going to appreciate by almost 4%? Now, I think now you have an understanding of that. But just to close this up, these are two very important economies in Africa. Ghana and Kenya are two very important democracies. Why? Because they present a very good example of countries that have a very democratic, very mature democracies, not as mature as the rest of the world, but in the context of Africa, Ghana and Kenya present very mature democracies. And as such, they have played a key role in showing a model of how African countries should adopt their governance. But challenges like what Ghana is facing right now is just a case of leadership, which I think with time they'll be able to correct. But as for Kenya, it continues to present itself as a good example of how to manage these tough economic times that most African countries are facing. This is not to say that Kenya as a country does not have challenges. They are numerous. But it continues to weather the storm. It continues to lead the way in how African democracies should be led and should be emulated. And for that matter, I want to finish up by telling you this. Ghana is highly resourceful. They are, out of the GDP of the economy of Ghana, almost 13% of that comes from its natural resources. Ghana has cocoa, Ghana has gold, yeah, and Ghana has oil. Kenya, on the other side, does not have mineral resources comparable to Ghana. Only 1% of the Kenyan GDP comes from the rents collected from its natural resources. And that is why I have always told you guys that the Kenyan people are the key to what the country has become. Yeah? And the Ghanaian people are the people who have also contributed to what the country has become. But in addition to that, they are also very well endowed and they are rich in mineral resources. Thank you very much, guys. I will come back with more. Just remember to subscribe. Remember to like. Remember to share. Remember to comment. For those people who know more than me, I will appreciate comments. I will appreciate more explanation. For the people who are learning out of this channel, continue asking questions. I expect you to ask me more questions so that I can also grow as an individual and as a person. And remember to just subscribe, guys. We are targeting to get monetized. Our channel has just started, but our target is that before the end of November or around December, we hit our 1,000 followers, we hit our 4,000 hours, and we are able to get monetized so that we can even now grow and become better at what we are doing. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the next session. Thank you.